Welcome to Skytech-Lens, where geopolitics meets gear ratios and strategy. Today we're breaking down a high-stakes standoff between two economic giants, Canada and the United States. President Trump is threatening a 35% tariff on Canadian imports, but Ottawa isn't backing down. Prime Minister Mark Carney is countering with strategic moves, leveraging everything from fertilizer to fuel. We'll dive into the mechanics of this conflict, supply chains, resource dependencies, and the strategies at play. Let's pop the hood on this escalating trade war and see how Canada is shifting its power train. When you think of global power, you probably don't picture a mineral from Saskatchewan. But potash, vital for fertilizer, is Canada's secret weapon, and the country controls over a third of the world's supply. The US is heavily reliant on Canadian potash to keep its farms running. This gives Canada a unique leverage point in any trade dispute. Instead of direct retaliation, Canada signals its power by hinting at potential disruptions. Even the suggestion of slowing potash shipments sends shockwaves through US agriculture. Canada's dominance in potash flips the traditional power dynamic, making Ottawa an equal at the negotiating table. The US can slap tariffs on finished goods, but Canada's control over this irreplaceable resource is a strategic trump card. There's no quick substitute for Canadian potash. Mines can't be built overnight. This means Canada can inflict targeted pain on a sensitive sector while minimizing self-harm. As this chess match unfolds, keep your eye on potash. It's the silent battlefield that could decide the outcome. The flow of this single commodity is a barometer for the health of the US-Canada relationship. Mark Carney knows it, and he's steering Canada with the skill of a master driver. For years, Canada's energy strategy was simple: send oil and gas south to the US. But political battles and American volatility forced a dramatic pivot. Canada is now building new pipelines to Asia and Europe, like the Trans Mountain expansion, declaring economic independence. Diversification means more buyers, better prices, and less vulnerability to US pressure. With global access, Canada can weather storms like tariff threats by rerouting energy exports. This flexibility is a powerful shield against economic coercion. The pipeline pivot isn't just about oil, it's about national resilience and strategic autonomy. Canada is no longer tied to a single customer, it's opening showrooms worldwide. The result, a stronger hand in negotiations and a more secure economic future. Prime Minister Carney's government is investing in this independence, ensuring Canada can chart its own course. By rerouting its most valuable commodity, Canada is building a future less tethered to US politics. The pipeline pivot is a cornerstone of Canada's new economic strategy. The trade war began with US tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum, fracturing decades of cross-border industry. Canada responded with targeted tariffs and, more importantly, defensive measures to protect its own market. Ottawa introduced quotas and safeguards to prevent a flood of cheap foreign steel, stabilizing the domestic industry. The crisis forced Canada to rethink its deep integration with the US and focus on resilience. There's a renewed push for domestic sourcing and innovation, especially in green steel production. Canada is moving up the value chain, aiming to compete on quality and technology. The steel shock became a catalyst for transformation, accelerating a shift towards self-sufficiency. The government is investing in critical minerals and R&D for next-generation alloys. What started as a crisis is now a drive for a tougher, more innovative steel sector. The US tariffs, meant to punish, have made Canada's industry more resilient. Canada is building its own shield, ready to thrive in a more unpredictable global economy. The shock has passed. What remains is a stronger industrial core. The North American auto industry is a tightly integrated machine, with parts crossing the border multiple times. A 35% tariff on Canadian imports would devastate this ecosystem, halting assembly lines and risking hundreds of thousands of jobs. The chaos would be immediate and unprecedented. Canada's strategy: build alliances with US automakers, suppliers, and governors who know their prosperity, depends on Canadian trade. By mapping supply chains, Canada shows that tariffs would hurt American jobs as much as Canadian ones. The approach is surgical, using data to isolate the White House from its own industrial base. Meanwhile, Canada is investing in the future, attracting EV and battery plants from global automakers. This positions Canada as a vital hub in the green transition, embedding it deeper into future supply chains. The threat of tariffs has forced Canada to be more strategic and forward-thinking. The response: mobilize US allies, negotiate exemptions, and invest in EVs. Canada's auto sector is emerging more critical and resilient for the 21st century. the crisis is driving a comprehensive, future-proof strategy. For decades, Canada's economy revolved around the US, a comfortable but risky dependency. Recent trade disputes have forced Canada to diversify, forging new trade deals with the EU and Asia-Pacific. These agreements open massive new markets, reducing reliance on the US-Canada is also building alliances with like-minded nations, creating a network to counterbalance American unpredictability. At home, the government is investing in key sectors, biomanufacturing, critical minerals and tech, to boost self-reliance. The shift is psychological too. Canadians are moving from branch plant mentality to global confidence. Canada is now a leader in AI, green energy, and tech innovation. The journey from reliance to resilience is challenging, but the relationship with the US is being fundamentally rebalanced. Canada is taking the wheel, charting its own economic course. The current disputes may be remembered as the moment Canada came of age as a global power. It's about building a robust, independent future. The era of passive dependence is over. As we reach the final lap, Canada's response to US protectionism stands out for its strategy and endurance. Potash, pipelines, steel and autos, each move is part of a coherent national strategy. Canada is reducing vulnerability and increasing sovereignty, shifting from quiet accommodation to confident self-determination. The pipeline pivot breaks captive market status, while potash reminds the US of its own dependencies. In steel, Canada turned crisis into innovation. In autos, it's securing its place in the EV future. These aren't isolated tactics, they're interconnected, building a more resilient economy. Prime Minister Carney's government is architecting this shift, but it reflects a broader national awakening. The era of taking the US relationship for granted is over. Trade disputes have stress-tested the old model, forcing a stronger, more durable framework. Canada is showing that victory in global economics goes to the most skilled, not just the biggest. The world, and a frustrated President Trump, are watching closely. Canada is redefining its place on the world stage. That's our deep dive into Canada's response to the US trade showdown. We've explored potash, pipelines, steel, and the future of autos, Canada's multi-layered strategy for resilience. Now it's your turn. Is potash Canada's most underrated weapon? Will EV investments give Canada the edge? Drop your thoughts in the comments, we read everyone. If you found this valuable, hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell for more. Until next time, keep your eyes on the road ahead. Thanks.